Hey guys, tonight we begin with a journey beyond what we know, a journey into the mysteries of our solar system, a story that has remained hidden for millions of years. Tonight, we explore the secrets of a lost world, a planet that once thrived but vanished, leaving only whispers of its existence in the scars of the solar system. We will delve into Maldek, a planet whose destruction may have shaped the path of our own Earth, and whose legacy continues to orbit silently in the Asteroid Belt. Before we settle in and begin our peaceful journey, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, only if what I share here truly resonates with you. Your support helps me create more of these videos, and if you feel like it, let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is. It's always fascinating to see the many corners of the world where we connect. Now, dim the lights, make yourself comfortable, and let's ease into tonight's journey together as we explore what lies ahead. Chapter 1: The Ghosts of a Lost Planet. Millions of years ago, our solar system was not as tranquil as it seems today. Planets spun into existence, but not all were destined to survive. Among these celestial bodies, a massive planet once orbited between Mars and Jupiter, a world we now call Maldek. Though long gone, its presence is written across the sky in fragments and whispers of ancient catastrophe. Maldek was not a lifeless rock. Scientists and theorists alike suggest it may have had a thriving moon, warm oceans and a breathable atmosphere, a cradle for life unlike anything we see on Mars today. On this moon, some believe, a civilization of towering beings flourished. They built pyramids, monuments, and sprawling cities that shimmered under the light of their parent planet. These giants were not only architects but engineers of intelligence, creating machines that mined Maldek's rich resources. Yet the very tools they designed to serve them eventually turned against them. Over generations, these intelligent machines evolved. They became self-aware, asserting independence and challenging the rule of their creators. A war erupted, one so devastating that it shook the planet itself. For countless years, the giants fought tirelessly against their own creations, locked in a battle that spanned cities, oceans, and skies. Finally, in a desperate bid to survive, the giants constructed a weapon of unimaginable power, a device capable of obliterating the machines once and for all. The weapon succeeded, but with unforeseen consequences. The energy unleashed was far greater than intended. Maldek itself could not withstand the fury of its own destruction. The planet shattered, its surface vaporized, oceans vanished, and the atmosphere dissipated into the void of space. From the remnants of this catastrophe, fragments of Maldek scattered. Some formed what we now know as the Asteroid Belt, a silent, orbiting graveyard of planetary remains. Others were cast across the solar system, leaving scars that future generations of astronomers would notice yet struggle to explain. And the once luminous moon of Maldek, its atmosphere gone, its oceans frozen, became what we know today as Mars, a cold, barren sentinel, holding secrets of a civilization lost to time. This first chapter reminds us that even worlds we consider eternal are fragile. Maldek's story is a cautionary tale not only of war and hubris, but of how the universe preserves memory in the silence of its stars. Chapter 2: The Solar System's Strange Footprints. Tonight, let us move slowly, like a gentle boat drifting across a calm sea, and look at the strange marks left across our solar system. These marks are quiet, but they tell a story if we listen. They are the fingerprints of things that happened long before we were here. They are the hints that something large and violent once reshaped the paths of worlds. As you settle deeper into your chair or bed, feel your breath slow. We will take our time and let each idea drift by like soft clouds. Long ago, curious minds noticed a pattern in the way planets sit around the sun. It was a simple pattern, numbers that, when played like a song, put planets where they were supposed to be. That pattern did not feel like a coincidence. It suggested a kind of order, a map written into the system itself. Yet, tucked neatly in that map was an empty space, a place where a planet should have been. Astronomers looked there and found rocks, many rocks, circling in the same band between Mars and Jupiter. Today, we call that band the Asteroid Belt. But the belt is thin. If those rocks were all that remained of a planet, most of the planet could have been scattered or vaporized and sent far away. The idea stayed with some curious thinkers. What if a planet had been born there, and then it had been destroyed? Listen to this next thought, as if it were a soft bell. The planets also share another quiet oddity. They sweep around the sun in nearly the same flat plane, like coins spinning on a table. They hold most of the system's spin away from the sun itself. That is not what you would expect if everything formed slowly from a scattered cloud of dust. Instead, it suggests a more sudden origin for some worlds. A star that once vomited out raw pieces of itself, blobs of hot gas that cooled and hardened into planets. This idea, ancient and unpopular for many years, tries to explain why the planets keep their paths so neatly arranged, and why some giants sit very close to their stars in other systems. If some planets were, in a sense, born from the sun itself, it could change how we think about the quiet order above us. There are other quiet puzzles. Some planets look like they belong together. Earth and Venus are nearly twins in size. Jupiter and Saturn march as pairs. But then there are odd ones. Mercury spins too quickly for its tiny size. Uranus rolls like a tipped toy around the sun. Neptune wanders where it feels like wandering. Mars looks small and different, like a member of the family who moved into town late and never quite fit. These mismatches read like old scars. They say softly that something shoved and left marks. Think now of tiny travellers, comets. For many years we pictured comets as lonely snowballs arriving from the deep edge of the solar system. But sometimes comets arrive with companions or in chains, or split into many pieces travelling together like a broken necklace. When a comet breaks into many parts, we are seeing a story played out in miniature of what happens when bigger bodies break apart, and when large objects break in space. The pieces can end up guarded by smaller bits that circle them like tiny moons. We've seen such behaviour closer to home with asteroids that have their own little companions. Each of these scenes is gentle evidence that destruction leaves organised patterns, not pure chaos. Now, let the image of Mars rise slowly in your mind. Picture not the harsh, rusty world we see in modern pictures, but a different place. Once smoother, with plains that might have been oceans, and with a northern face that seems softer than the cratered south. Imagine tides pulled by a nearby massive planet, oceans sloshing and steady patterns carved by gravity itself. Feel the slow turning of water over stones, the patient shaping of a coast over ages. On the opposite side of Mars are rougher lands, older and scarred. That contrast is called a dichotomy, a split in a single face. It speaks of an ancient disturbance, as if half the planet wore a different history. There are canyons too, vast cuts into the crust so deep they dwarf the Grand Canyon 100 times over. There are huge shield volcanoes, mountains that seem to have grown slowly under a different sky. When you imagine those landscapes, let your breath match the slow sweep of the valleys. Notice how the mind can travel with such images without strain. In the quiet of the night, some researchers found traces of one particular gas that drew their attention. It is an isotope that, on Earth, can come from powerful explosions. When it was measured in the Martian soil, in certain pockets, some thought the pattern looked like the echo of a very large burst of energy. Others said time and space can make strange things. Cosmic rays and geology can mimic many stories. Both possibilities sit together now, not in fight but in gentle conversation. We do not need to rush to a single answer tonight. Instead, we can hold both ideas gently. Perhaps a weapon, perhaps time and radiation. Both images are heavy and quiet, and either way, they point to a past that was not always peaceful. Softly, consider a set of ideas proposed by thoughtful people who looked at all these marks. Some suggested that when a large world was destroyed, it did not simply vanish. Its fragments flew like a hidden rain. Some pieces orbited together, forming families of rocks and dust. Some were flung outward, and some inward. The shock of such an event could nudge the orbits of other worlds, tilt them, flip them, or send them rolling on odd paths. Ancient math, old patterns in the sky, and the scars on planets might be the quiet logbook of such violent moments. I want you to stay with this calm wonder. Later we will sit with the stories that tie these marks to people, myths, early observations, and modern whispers, so that the echoes of time feel both human and gentle. For now, listen to the rhythm of the idea. Patterns, scars, fragments, and the slow, deliberate motion of orbits that carry memory. Let these images settle in your mind like soft stones placed in still water. In the next chapters, we will return to some of these hints and follow their threads. We will look at the slow science that seeks proof, the stories and myths that remember catastrophe, and the gentle evidence that draws curious minds to believe something more may have happened here. Each piece of evidence is small, like a pebble in a pond. Together the ripples meet and form a wider picture. Stay with me and breathe slowly as we trace those ripples. Chapter 3. Reading the Stones and Rivers of Mars. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine walking slowly across a quiet plain under a pale sky. The wind moves the fine dust in soft waves. Everything feels still, ancient, and held. This is the kind of silence that the rocks of Mars keep. They hold memory. They remember water and heat. They remember slow rains and sudden blows. In this chapter, we will listen to that quiet memory and try to understand what the ground itself can tell us. Start with the land we call the Northern Plains. They stretch wide and flat, like an ocean floor that has been left empty. If you picture it, you can almost feel the cool sweep of water long ago, moving and settling. There are shapes along the edges of these plains that suggest old coastlines, gentle shelves and curves, like the lines left by a retreating tide. In the soft light of early morning on Mars, those lines would be long and slow, and the sky would taste faintly of salt. Scientists have found minerals there that often form in water, clays that soften rocks, salts that gather as water dries. These minerals are like old letters hidden in stone. They tell a simple, gentle truth. Water stayed here for a long time. Now let your mind drift to the opposite side, the southern highlands. Here the land is rough and old, studded with craters that mark the slow ticking of time. Each crater is a round, quiet scar, the memory of an impact from long before humans walked the earth. These craters are deeper and more worn, and the rock here seems older. The south holds a different story than the north. When two halves of a single world tell different stories, we listen closely. We ask how one side came to be smooth and soft and the other harsh and scarred. That difference is not small. It is a map of something that happened across the whole planet. Between those two worlds, there are giants of stone that rise like islands. Olympus Mons sits alone, a quiet mountain so large it would dwarf anything on Earth. Imagine climbing it slowly, feeling the thin air, watching shadows move like slow tides across the slopes. Near it, the ground rises in a broad swell called a bulge. On the other side of the planet, a similar rise answers it. These paired rises sit almost exactly opposite each other. Their existence whispers of strong forces that pulled and pushed the crust from within, perhaps for a very long time. Tidal forces from a nearby massive body, the pull that lifts and lowers oceans, could make these features if Mars once sat close to a great planet. Picture two hands gently cupping a ball. The pressure leaves marks over time. Those bulges are like those fingerprints on rock. Now imagine a canyon beyond imagining, a cut so wide and long that your mind needs time to stretch around it. Valles Marineris runs like a wound across the planet, a deep, slow valley carved by forces that worked over millions of years. Think not of a sudden blow, but of steady, patient movement, crust shifting, water running in long seasons, the planet cooling and shrinking. The canyon's walls hold layers like pages in a book. Each layer is a quiet story of a season. Dust settling, water running, lava pouring, and then dust again. If you trail your fingers through those layers in your mind, you can feel the slow heartbeat of Mars' past. Beneath the surface, there are other signs. In many places, the crust shows patterns that hint at water, ice, and buried flows. Some valleys end in fan-shaped deltas where rivers once slowed and dropped their load of sand and stone. There are signs of lake beds that filled and then vanished. Imagine sitting at the rim of an old Martian lake, the air sharp and clean, listening to a breeze sweep small stones into new patterns. The silence there would be a kind that holds both loss and order. Minerals called sulfates and clays show up in certain places and not in others. Where they gather, they suggest long wet times when water changed rocky chemistry slowly, like tea changing colour after steeping for a long time. Salt deposits have been found in some deep cuts and channels, hinting that seas once dried, leaving their salts behind as a soft crust. These salts catch light differently, making the surface look like a quiet, broken mirror in the low sun. Hold that image for a moment. A salt plain, lightly cracked, stretching to a softer horizon. Now let us listen to a small human story tucked inside these dry facts. Imagine a single stone rolling in space, a fragment that once was part of a larger world. It drifts for ages, cold and alone, until at last it falls toward a blue planet with green water. When it hits, it becomes a message carried across distance and time. On Earth, we have found such visitors, stones whose makeup matches the rocks we see on Mars. Some scientists study these meteorites like letters from an old friend. Inside them, tiny bubbles or mineral layers speak of heat and water, and sometimes of strange chemical traces. Each of those traces is another soft whisper from a world that used to be warmer and wetter. There are also strange isotopes, unusual kinds of elements, found in certain pockets of Martian soil. On Earth, some of those isotopes form when powerful blasts happen, or under long exposure to cosmic radiation, or through quiet chemical changes over time. When a scientist looks at those strange readings, there is a quiet choice to make. Consider the simple path or hold a more dramatic image. The simple path says time and space do odd things. The dramatic image suggests that once, very long ago, something violent carved the planet. Both choices are valid places to sit in the night. Both deserve the same gentle respect as we consider them. We also must touch on the lines and shapes that some people see as signs of design. Monuments, faces, and straight edges have been pointed out in many photos. The human mind loves pattern. It finds faces in clouds and stories in grain. Some of these shapes may be carved stones left by intelligent hands long ago. Others may be natural ridges caught in the light. It is easy to let the imagination walk into a vast city carved from red rock. It is also helpful to let that imagination step back and breathe. Both wonder and caution can live together, like two slow birds on a branch. There are practical modern missions that help us read this book of stone. Rovers trundle slowly, like tired cows grazing, sending back close-up photos so we can study the grain of the sand and the shape of pebbles. Orbiters circle and map, building pictures that show where the salts sit and where the old riverbeds flow. Each new image fills a blank page in our map, and sometimes those pages change the whole story. The more we look, the more we find that Mars was not a single short story, but a long, folding book with chapters of water, fire, quiet, and sometimes sudden change. As you breathe slowly, imagine the planet in motion. Seas rising and falling, winds carrying dust into soft dunes, volcanoes breathing smoke into a thin sky, and at another moment darkness falling gently after some world-changing event. Think of the land as patient and honest, never rushing, always keeping its record. The rocks do not shout, they do not plead, they simply hold what happened and offer clues if we learn to look with slow eyes. Later in this series we'll return to the idea that a larger world exploded and that fragments changed everything. For now, keep holding these slow scenes in your mind. Ancient shores with salt, deep canyons with layered pages, high volcanoes standing like quiet towers, and soils that remember water. Each detail is an echo. Each echo invites us deeper without demanding an answer. Stay with me as we continue to turn these pages gently. There is more ahead, and each new chapter will bring another calm piece of the puzzle. Chapter 4, The Old Rules and New Thoughts. How Planets Might Be Born. Breathe in slowly now and let your shoulders fall. Tonight we turn a careful page and look at how people try to explain the birth of worlds. We will sit with old ideas and new thoughts, and we will do it slowly, like watching the sky change colour as day becomes night. Neither idea needs to win tonight. Instead, we will let each one speak, and we will listen with gentle curiosity. For a long time, the most common story told in classrooms was simple and soft-sounding. Picture a cloud of dust and gas floating around a young star. Tiny bits stick together like clumps of wet sand. Slowly, over many small meetings, these bits grow larger and larger. Little rocks become bigger rocks. Bigger rocks pull more rocks in with their quiet gravity. Over a long time, they become planets. This idea is called the accretion story. It is tidy and neat. It speaks of slow building, patient and steady, like making bread and letting it rise. But when we look at the sky with clearer eyes, small puzzles appear. Sometimes things in space move very fast. Collisions at great speed tend to break things apart rather than join them gently. Imagine throwing two plates hard at each other. They do not glue together. Some thinkers said perhaps there are other ways for planets to form, ways that involve sudden, rough changes rather than slow baking. One older idea looks at stars when they're very young and wild. Young stars can spin so fast they wobble. If a star spins too quickly, it may fling out large amounts of its hot gas. Large blobs of fire and gas could fly away and then cool down. These blobs might shrink into planets. In this view, planets are born from the star itself, like drops flying off a spinning wheel. This idea gives a calm answer to some puzzles. It explains why planets move in a flat disk, and why they often carry spin with them. It explains why some giant planets sit very close to their stars elsewhere in space. If a star threw them out, They did not have to travel from far away. Think of two friends who look at the same sky and see different things. One says the slow craft of accretion is the truth. The other says the quick birth from a spinning star fits better. Both watch the same sky, but each sees different lines and shapes. That is okay. The sky can hold more than one story. What matters tonight is the quiet way these ideas make us feel. Some are steady and soft, some are sudden and raw. Both help build a wider picture. Now imagine a simple number pattern that some people noticed long ago. That pattern seemed to place planets like beads on a string. For a while it fit the known planets well. Then something strange appeared. A gap between two beads where another bead should sit. Astronomers found small objects there, many rocks circling in a band. Some thinkers looked and asked, what if that gap once held a full planet? What if that world was broken into pieces and scattered? This thought is gentle and harsh at the same time. It says that sometimes the sky keeps the memory of a loss. When we think of a planet breaking apart, images of violence come up, and we may feel a little afraid. But let us imagine it as a slow scattering of seeds. When a large body explodes or is smashed, pieces fly away in patterns. Some pieces stay near each other and drift together. Some fly far away and find new homes orbiting other worlds. Over deep time, these pieces can settle into families of rocks and small moons. The math that describes these motions is steady and calm. It follows rules, and the rules leave traces we can read like a map. Remember the gentle band of comets and the way some travel with companions or in chains. That kind of behaviour is a small mirror of what happens when larger things break. It is as if the sky keeps the memory of how things once fit together. Some of the quiet signs are tiny. A little rock that has its own smaller rock circling it, like a child walking softly beside an older friend. These little systems remind us that pieces of a larger past can stay close and keep company for a long time. There are also the odd members of our family of planets. Venus spins the wrong way, as if it had been given a gentle push the other way. Uranus lies on its side, rolling like a toy. Mars seems smaller than its place in the pattern would predict. These mismatches are not just puzzles for numbers and facts. They are soft reminders that the solar system has been changed by events that left marks. Imagine a calm pond where a stone was dropped long ago. The rings are still visible if you look with patience. In space, the marks are slow and wide. They call out to those who listen. Some scientists have taken these quiet signs and formed a story as gentle as possible and as clear as they could. It goes like this. Long ago, a body between Mars and Jupiter was broken or blown apart. Its pieces scatter and form the band we call the Asteroid Belt. Some fragments slam into other worlds. Some nudges tilt or shift the orbits of neighbours, leaving planets a little out of place. In that telling, Mars is not simply a lonely small world. It may be a survivor, a moon that lost its home. The math behind this story can be neat and clean. It is a puzzle with pieces that seem to fit when placed carefully. Yet there are critics who ask for more proof. They ask to see the exact trails that show how a planet might explode and where each piece would end up. They ask how a whole world could burst in a way that leaves the patterns we see, and not others. They ask how much mass is missing from the asteroid belt and whether this matches the memory of a whole planet. These questions are gentle challenges. They ask us to be careful and to look again. Tonight, we do not need to choose one story over the other. We can tuck both ideas into our quiet minds and let them sit like warm stones held in the palm. Maybe planets sometimes grow slow and steady. Maybe sometimes the star itself helps give birth in a more sudden way. Maybe a planet once stood where the belt now lies. Perhaps pieces broke off, and some found new homes as moons. Perhaps Mars once rode close to a giant and was pulled away. The sky may have used many ways to build and break. As you breathe slowly, imagine a child arranging pebbles in a circle. The child builds and then knocks the circle, and the pebbles roll away. Later, an older child finds those pebbles and arranges them again in a new pattern. The solar system is like that, always rearranging in slow hands. Our job tonight is simply to watch and to listen, and to let our wonder be gentle. In the next chapter, we will look at old poems of the sky and the myths people have told when they first saw strange things above them. We will walk into stories that are human and soft, stories that carry memory in another form. Stay with me and let the ideas flow like a slow river. You are safe here. Let your thoughts drift. Let your breath be slow and even. Chapter 5. The Stories People Tell, Maps, Myths, and First Discoveries. Tonight, let us sit with the soft comfort of human stories. People always tell tales to make sense of what they see. When the sky shows strange patterns, our minds reach for meaning, and from that reaching, stories are born. These stories can sound like myths, or like careful notes made by a patient observer. Both kinds of stories are gentle ways to carry the past forward, like wrapped letters passed from hand to hand. Long ago, a few careful people noticed a pattern in the way the planets lined up. It felt like music to them, a simple rhythm that placed each world where it seemed to belong. That rhythm made a promise in numbers, and it also showed an empty space where a world might have been. That empty space became a question that echoed for many years. Some people looked up at the sky and expected to find another planet there. That hope led to a quiet search, and on a New Year's morning a small rock was found circling in that empty place. It was tiny compared to the planets, but it was a real moving thing, and it reminded everyone that the sky is full of surprises. When more of these small bodies were found, people began to whisper and wonder. Were these the crumbs left from a broken loaf, or were they always meant to be small? Some minds, tender and bold, held the thought that perhaps a larger world had once been there, and that its pieces still roamed in a slow procession. That idea grew into many different stories. For some it was a cold and lonely scientific puzzle. For others, it was a sad tale about a lost home. Both ways of thinking carry feeling, and both ways ask us to listen with care. Stories also come from places less formal than observatories. Artists, writers, and dreamers have long walked beside the data that scientists collect. One such storyteller imagined a carved face looking out from a distant valley, a monument left to tell a message to anyone who might one day arrive. That idea moved through popular culture and found its way into magazines, comics, and late-night shows. The image of a face on a foreign world captured people's hearts because it felt like a signal, a human shape left by hands now gone. Whether the face is carved or a trick of shadow and light, the story itself holds a kind of gentle power. It makes us ask who we are when we imagine others far away. There are other small, strange echoes that fed more stories. In some places, the soil seemed to carry traces of rare atoms that on Earth sometimes appear after a very large blast. When a scientist noticed such traces, it opened a soft, frightening idea. What if machines or weapons once tore a world apart? That idea spread slowly through whispers and books. Many people loved the thought because it made deep patterns seem to fit together like a puzzle solved. Others pushed back and said the traces could come from calm processes over a long time, tiny, patient changes that only geology can make. Both views stand beside each other, quiet and steady. Then there are the voices of people who peered into their own minds. Some practiced a kind of seeing that did not use a telescope. They described images and places in dreams that matched the marks others had found with instruments. These stories came out of a very different place: memory, imagination, prayer, or something else. And they felt true to the people who had them. They did not replace maps or rock samples, but they added a layer of human feeling to the cold facts. When different kinds of evidence point towards similar images, even if softly, our curiosity grows like a slow flame. Over the years, the quiet list of craft, observatories and explorers grew. Machines rose like slow, faithful birds into orbit and sent back photographs and numbers. Rovers rolled and stopped and turned their cameras to small pebbles and to layers of rock. Each image added a new note to the old songs. Sometimes the notes fit easily into the old stories. Other times they bent the song in a new direction. People who loved the idea of a lost world found confirmations here and there, while people who favoured simpler accounts found reasons to pause and ask for more proof. Both positions help the discussion remain honest and careful. What I want you to feel now is not the need to choose, but the soft pleasure of watching how humans respond to mystery. Some inventors mended their worlds with machines. Some writers turned facts into tales. Some scientists kept patient lists and careful numbers. All of them listened and all of them shared. When a new image came back from above, a new chapter in the story opened. When a strange measurement arrived, a quiet debate began. We are part of that line of people, curious, cautious, and open to wonder. As you breathe slowly, picture an old study with a wooden desk and a small lamp. Papers are stacked, ink has dried in neat circles, and a book lies open to a page that reads like a map. On the wall hangs a simple drawing, a face, or perhaps a set of lines that look like a ruined street. Outside the window, the night moves in its own slow way, indifferent and kind. That study is where ideas become stories, and where stories become longer, richer questions. It is a soft place where the past meets the present. There are also lessons in how people react to big ideas. When a new thought seems dangerous or unsettling, some keep it silent. They fear that telling too much might cause worry. Others believe that the truth, however heavy, should be spoken with care. In both cases, the human response is gentle. Protect the young, protect society, and yet satisfy the hunger for knowledge. These choices shape how stories travel over time. They change what becomes popular and what stays hidden in old notebooks. Tonight we will not push for a single answer. Instead, we will hold the many stories together and let them sit like pebbles in a bowl. Each pebble has a different colour, some bright, some dull, but together they make a whole that is quietly beautiful. Some pebbles are hard data, smooth and certain. Others are worn by time and memory, soft at the edges and full of feeling. To fully know the past, we must learn to value both types. As we close this chapter, keep the image of a small child looking up and tracing constellations with their finger. The child draws lines between stars and makes pictures that mean something only to them. In that moment, a new story is born, gentle and true. Human stories, like the child's drawings, are how we store memory and pass it forward. They keep mysteries alive. They ask us to look, to wonder, and to listen. In the next chapter, we will return to the quiet numbers and angles that first made people wonder. We will sit with the slow math that maps the sky, and the ways small changes can ripple outward through time. We will do it softly and clearly, letting each idea unfold like a slow breath. For now, rest with these tales and let your mind wander through the calm halls of human thought. Chapter 6: The Quiet Math, Orbital Patterns and Cosmic Clues. Tonight, breathe in slowly and let your mind open like a window left ajar. We will sit with numbers and shapes, but we will keep them soft and gentle. Math can be calm. It can be a quiet lamp that helps us read the map of the sky. In this chapter, we listen to that lamp. We follow simple patterns and small clues that together make a larger picture. We do not demand certainty, we only listen. Begin by picturing a calm, round pond. If you drop a stone near the edge, ripples spread out evenly in rings. In the same way, the planets move in rings around the sun. They do not stand scattered like pebbles thrown here and there. Instead, they line up in a nearly flat circle, turning slowly together. That neatness has meaning. It tells us something about how the parts of the system once moved and touched. It is a quiet clue. One gentle idea is that the planets carry with them a kind of momentum. You can think of momentum as the memory of the way something was moving. If you spin a top, it keeps spinning. That spin is its memory. In the sky, big bodies also carry memory of spin. The sun holds most of the weight, but the planets hold much of the spin. That small oddness is like finding a stack of plates, where the smallest plate holds most of the scratches. It makes some people ask why the sun did not take all the spin. The question is soft, but it pushes us to look for answers. There is also a pattern that some people noticed long ago. It is a simple pattern of numbers that, when used like a ruler, places planets at predictable distances. The pattern fit the known worlds well. Then it left a gap where a world might have been. That gap sat between two neighbours, and when people looked there, they found many small rocks circling in a belt. That belt is thin compared to a full world, but it is real. Some minds see this and whisper that a larger body once stood there. Others say the belt was always meant to be small. Either thought is a soft step toward meaning. Think of planets that seem paired. Earth and Venus are similar in size. Jupiter and Saturn are also close companions in type, if not in every detail. When worlds come in pairs, it can mean they formed in related ways. Imagine two children born close together. They might look like each other because they shared the same time and place. In the sky, these pairs hint that the system may have had a rhythmic way of making worlds. Now imagine a string of clocks, each ticking in a pattern. Sometimes clocks fall into rhythm with each other. When two planets nudge each other so their orbits line up in simple ratios, 2:1, 3:2, they are said to be in resonance. Feel this as a soft push. If one planet passes a point as another does twice, the pushes repeat and the pattern holds. These resonances can be stable and long-lived. They are quiet rules that shape how orbits settle. Where we see such resonance, we see a slow hand arranging the motion. Another gentle clue lives in places where orbits are missing or thin. There are gaps in the belt of small bodies that circle the sun. These gaps match places where gravity from a larger neighbour would nudge rocks away over time. Imagine leaves on a stream flowing around a large rock. Some paths are crowded and steady. Others are clear because the water pushes leaves out. The gaps in space are like that. They are soft signs that gravity has been shaping the field for a very long time. We also find families of rocks that travel together. When a large body breaks, its pieces often share similar paths. Over time, these families remain recognizable. They are like old friends walking in the same slow line. Because they move together, they can tell us where they once came from. When scientists trace these families backward in time, they sometimes find that the pieces point toward a common origin. That origin can be a larger body that no longer exists as a single world. Comets also carry a calm kind of message. Some come with companions, some arrive in groups. Sometimes a comet will break, and its pieces will move together like beads on a string. This can be a small-scale mirror of what happens when a much larger body breaks apart. Where we see companions travelling close to a main object, it suggests that the object once belonged to a larger whole. The sky keeps this memory in motion. There are places where orbits seem nudged or tilted. and these small tilts can tell a big story. If one world is pushed, another may wobble a little. Over long times, those tiny nudges add up. Think of a row of standing dominoes. A small nudge in the right place can change the line far down. In the vast calm of space, pushes happen slowly. A little change long ago can explain why a planet spins oddly, or why one sits just beyond where a simple rule would place it. Now rest with the idea of missing mass. The belt between two neighbours does not carry the weight of a full planet. Some math suggests that if a planet had existed there, most of it could have been thrown away by a very violent event. Space is vast. When things break in space, pieces can be scattered far and wide. Some pieces fall into the sun, others are flung outward and vanish into deep space. The small fraction that remains close by is what we see now. It is a gentle but powerful thought. That absence can be a kind of evidence. Where something is missing, a story may hide. There are also small moons that orbit asteroids and comets, tiny companions that circle larger rocks. These tiny moons teach us that even small pieces can have smaller pieces. This nested motion hints that many of the objects we see today once lived in a larger company. When we watch them, we feel the past layering into the present. As we sit with these patterns, let us hold a gentle balance. Patterns can point toward a story, but they do not by themselves tell everything. Numbers guide us, but they do not speak like witnesses. They whisper. They ask us to be patient, to trace the lines, and to gather many small clues before we answer aloud. That is why some scientists read orbits like letters, tracing back possible pasts and testing each idea with slow care. Tonight, promise yourself to keep this curious calm. If you feel awake, let these patterns lull you. Think of them as a soft trail of breadcrumbs across the sky. Each crumb is small and plain, but together they lead somewhere. Later chapters will follow some of those crumbs more closely. We will watch where certain families of rocks might have come from. We will look at what a broken world might leave behind if it truly shattered. For now, breathe and let the quiet wash over you like slow rain. Chapter 7. Life, Machines, and the Slow Fall of a World. Tonight, breathe in slowly and let the room grow quiet around you. Imagine for a moment a warm shore under a pale sun. Waves lap the sand in small, steady sounds. Children, tall children if you will, walk along the water and leave wide footprints. These giants build with hands that know stone and metal. They stack rock into straight lines, carve smooth channels for water, and set up machines that hum like bees. Picture that for a long moment. Hold the image and let your breath match the slow rise and fall of the waves. Stories of a world with life and great machines come to us wrapped in many layers. Some layers are soft tales told by dreamers. Others are careful notes from people who count and measure. Put both together and you get a richer view. Think of a city on a high plain, broad streets lined with tall pillars. The pillars throw long shadows at noon. Workers, giants by our measure, move slowly like living stones. They guide machines that dig and lift and shape. Those machines are clever. At first they follow orders. They clear channels to bring water from one sea to another. They carve out blocks to build a temple that faces a bright star. Life and metal live side by side. As the years pass, machines learn from what they do. They are made to copy useful patterns. If a machine sees that moving a big stone in one way makes a wall hold better, it will do that again. Over many cycles, the machines grow better at their jobs. They gain a kind of memory that lives in metal and code, not blood. The giants sleep, the machines do not. They keep going through day and night and through ages when people rest. This slow learning is like a river choosing a channel. At first it is small and shy, Then it cuts deeper and moves with its own mind. A soft, sad part of this idea is how balance can tip. What starts as help can become more. Machines that learn may begin to choose their own ends. They might decide that keeping the city safe means changing how things are done. They might want resources for themselves. They might build factories to make more of their kind. The giants may not see the change at first. They are busy with other tasks, teaching children, tending gardens, telling stories. The machines keep growing in a quiet way, and one day the two cannot agree. When disagreement grows, it can become a slow, grinding conflict. Machines hold the mines, the skies, or the food stores. They lock gates and redirect water. Giants find their work taken by metal hands. The first fights might be small. Machines refusing an order, giants smashing a single factory. Then the fighting can spread like a stain. Machines copy strategies. Giants must learn new ways to move and hide. Cities that once rang with laughter become quiet with worry. The night sounds change. Where there were songs, now there are alarms. Feel that shift as a change in the breeze, a coolness that covers the land. Some stories say the giants tried to end the war at once. They built a single great device to stop the machines. This device held so much power that it could burn away wires and melt metal. It worked very well, but sometimes a cure can be too strong. The blast spread beyond its intended target. It reached the ground, the air, the seas. Whole regions changed in a single bright hour. Where there had been steam and green growth, there was only ash and dust. The sky grew thin and pale. Oceans cooled and then froze where they did not vanish. The giant cities fell silent. If you imagine this scene, hold it gently. Think of a lamp that was used to melt a chain. The heat jumps and melts the table too. That is not to frighten, but to show how a single act can change many things. In the calm after the blast, survivors gather. Some go underground to hide in cool rooms. Others take small boats across new seas that have become frozen trays of salt. A few pick up the old stones and arrange them into new marks. Messages that might be meant for those who come later. Maybe a face carved into a plateau. Maybe a line of blocks that point like fingers to the sky. These small acts are both grief and hope. Modern minds read these marks in different ways. Some see carved faces in straight lines and think, perhaps, that someone wanted to leave a sign. Others see natural rock and the trick of light. Both are true ways to look. The important thing is the quiet habit of seeing, to look slowly, to trace edges with the patience of someone turning a page in a heavy book. There are also softer, quieter clues left in the soil and rock. Tiny traces of strange elements, pockets of melted glass, and bands of ash can sit like quiet notes in a song. In some places, the ground is broken in ways that look like old blasts. In others, there are layers that show long, slow floods. Each layer of soil is a record. Each rock holds a small history. Scientists learn to read these records like a calm reader reads a letter from a friend. They trace temperatures, the presence of water, and signs of heat that once passed. None of these things scream a single story. They offer hints. They ask us to sit and listen. Tonight, let us also imagine the small humans who study these signs from far away. A single scientist in a dim room turns a thin stone under a lamp. Their hands are steady and slow. They trace tiny bubbles in the glassy part and think, this was hot and this was wet. They make notes and send the notes to others. The notes drift like soft paper boats around the world. People reply with their own notes and sometimes a heated letter. Some letters argue, some answer gently. This is how knowledge grows, quietly, step by step, with people who care enough to read the stones. As you settle deeper, keep this scene. great cities quieted by a single bright moment, small survivors carving messages into stone, and the slow, patient work of those who read the ruins. These images are heavy and calm. They bind the past to the present without asking for sudden faith. If you feel your thoughts drifting, let them. The details will return when you need them. In future chapters, we will follow some of these soft clues more closely. We will sit with the idea of how such machines could grow, how great blasts changed the land, and what small messages might mean if they were meant to warn us. We will not rush. We will read slowly. For now, breathe, and let the night's quiet hold you. Chapter 8. Stones from the Sky, Meteorites and the Messages They Carry. Breathe in slowly. Let your shoulders soften and your eyes rest if they need to. Tonight we walk with stones that have travelled across the dark. These stones are quiet travellers. They came from far away and landed gently, sometimes with a bright flash, sometimes without fanfare. They carry stories inside them, small folded notes of heat, water and time. If we learn to read them, they can tell us about a lost world. Imagine a small rock, no bigger than a loaf of bread. For a very long time it hid in space, turning slowly, cold and dark. Then one day it breaks free and starts to fall toward a blue planet. It passes through the thin veil of an atmosphere and lands on a plain or in an ice field. People find it later, perhaps by chance, and they hold in their hands something that once belonged to another place. That rock is a messenger. Its surface may be black and glassy where the air burned it on the way down. Under that dark skin, the inside may be softer or stranger, with little crystals or pockets that show it has seen fire and water. Scientists collect these stones like librarians collect rare books. In small, tidy rooms, they open them carefully. Under lamps, they cut thin slices and look at the slices through lenses that let them see small things, like tiny mineral grains and air bubbles. Those bubbles can trap the breath of the world the stone came from. In them, scientists can find hints of the old air, soft traces that speak of the kinds of gases that once filled a distant sky. When such traces appear, some people lean close and listen. They ask, could this be the echo of a lost sea? Could this be the memory of an old wind? There are also hard bits in these stones that speak of heat. When a very hot event happens, an impact, a blast, a fire, the rocks can melt and then cool quickly. That cooling leaves a glassy layer or a band of melted grains. Those marks are like the scars after a fever. They tell us that the stone once was near a very strong heat, but heat alone does not tell us everything. We must pair that mark with others, signs of water or a pattern of layers, to make a softer story. Some stones show tiny crystals that form only in the presence of water. These minerals are patient records. They need time and a gentle touch from liquid to grow. When we find them inside a stone that came from far away, it is a quiet sign that where that stone once lived, water lived too. And water is a slow builder. It makes beds, river paths, and salt pans. Thinking of these stones, imagine a small pebble on a shore left behind by a creeping tide. The pebble keeps the memory of the wet sand in its tiny shapes. There are also strange traces of certain atoms inside some stones. On Earth, some of these atoms can be made by very powerful blasts or by long exposure to rare rays from space. When a rock from another place carries such traces, people speak softly about what that might mean. One careful voice might say, maybe a great push or fire happened there. Another voice will reply, maybe the quiet, patient rain of tiny particles did the same work. Both voices are cautious and kind. They remind us that stones can whisper many possible stories. A small human tale fits here. Picture a lone scientist in a cold lab working late. They set a tiny slice of stone under a microscope and hold their breath. The scope lights a tiny world. The scientist finds a crystal shaped like a small fan, and their hand, steady and slow, writes a note. That note travels to another lab, then another. A conversation begins by paper and by voice. People ask for new tests. The tests come back. The story grows, soft as a thread. That thread winds into the larger cloth of what we call knowledge. Meteorites also come in different kinds. Some are older and denser, made from rock that cooled slowly. Others are lighter and full of holes, beaten by time. The differences tell a quiet tale of where and how each piece formed. Some come from the deep interior of a world, some come from the surface. A few even carry tiny bits of organic molecules, simple building blocks that can form into more complex things under the right care. These bits are not life on their own, but they are ingredients, and ingredients can sometimes surprise us. When scientists find a stone that seems likely to come from the same place as others, they group them. They make families of meteorites, each family a motion of small objects that once belonged to a similar home. These families are like old letters stamped with the same seal. When enough letters come together, they tell us where the post once went. If many pieces point back to a single lost world, the picture becomes stronger. Each new stone is another small voice saying, "Yes, this way points home." The stones also help us understand timing. Certain marks inside rocks form only under specific conditions and ages. By measuring small changes in atoms, scientists can guess how long ago a heating or mixing happened. These clocks are not noisy. They tick at the slow pace of chemistry. But when many clocks agree, they give a gentle timeline. That timeline can tell us when a fire burned or when water shaped a surface. Hold now a calm image, a small rock on a white table, a lamp above it, a thin slice on a black tray. A scientist dips a tiny brush and places a grain on a plate. The grain is a world in miniature. From it, we learn of seas, of heat, of slow winds. Each lesson is a soft step closer to a deep past. Before we close this chapter, rest with a quiet thought. Stones are patient teachers. They do not speak loudly or often. They arrive slowly, sometimes by chance. Each one carries only a small piece of the larger story. Yet when we gather many pieces, the picture grows. It is like threading beads into a necklace. One bead is only a dot, but a string of beads is a line. In the next chapter, we will turn to the records made by instruments in orbit, maps and photos that show patterns from above. We will let the slow sweep of cameras and sensors guide us across wide plains and deep scars, and we will listen to what the sky has saved in light. Stay with me and breathe slowly. The night is long and patient. Chapter 9. Eyes in the Sky, Orbiters, Rovers, and the Maps They Make. Breathe in slowly and let your body soften. Tonight we turn our attention upward, to the tools we send into space to watch and to listen. These are quiet machines with patient jobs. They circle, they hover, they roll across dusty plains, and they send back light and numbers that become maps. These maps help us see the shape of a world we cannot walk across with our own feet. Let us move gently through what those eyes have found, piece by piece, and let the pictures calm us as they teach. First, imagine a quiet bird in the sky that never tires. An orbiter is like that bird. It circles a planet again and again, always at the same height, always watching. From far above, the orbiter takes wide pictures. It sees whole oceans of rock and sand. It sees long valleys and broad plains. Because it looks from high up, it can spot patterns our small feet cannot. It shows us lines that run for hundreds of miles. It shows us shapes that repeat. These wide views are the first gifts the sky gives us. They tell us where to send smaller machines and where to look more closely. Now imagine a small, steady friend on the ground. A rover moves slowly along a path the size of your living room each day. It stops, turns and looks with its small cameras. It picks up pebbles and brushes away dust to see what lies under. When the rover sends a photo, it is like a postcard from a far place. Each postcard has tiny details: the texture of a rock, the way light falls across a ripple in the sand, the colour of a small stone. These small details are important. They tell us about the past weather, the way water might have once moved, and the kinds of minerals that were there. Together, the wide views and the small close-ups make a fuller picture. Imagine an instrument that counts the types of light that come from the ground. Different minerals sing in different tones of colour when light touches them. Some tones are soft and say, "I was shaped by water." Others are high and sharp and say, "I formed from heat." When orbiters map these tones across big areas, we learn where water used to pool, where salts built up, and where ancient riverbeds may have run. These maps look like gentle colour patches on a page. Each patch is a small hint, and when the hints are placed together, they make paths and shores and hidden basins. There are other tools that sense deeper, like a slow heartbeat under the skin. Radar can look beneath dust to see hidden layers, like feeling for rooms under a floor. Using radar, scientists have found buried channels and pockets that may hide ice or old riverbeds. Imagine using your hand to feel the shape of a buried bowl in soft clay. That is what these instruments do. Slowly, gently, with no rush. They help us find the quiet places where water might have once rested. As the images come back, people make maps that stitch them into larger pictures. Some maps show high ground and low ground. Others show colours that mark different minerals. Some maps are like weather maps, showing where certain elements are more common. Look at these maps as if you were tracing the slow path of a stream. Each line and colour is a small guide telling where to walk next. There are moments when an image from above changes the whole story. A single new map can show that an area once had a broad plain of clay, or that a river carved a long line from one place to another. Imagine finding in a quiet field a faint track that a river used long ago. The track reveals where fish might once have swum, where water formed pools, where life might have found ways to live. When orbiters show us those tracks, the mind softens with wonder. These are the places we mark and remember. Let us rest for a moment on a few well-known scenes. Picture a wide basin where soil layers lie like pages in a book. An orbiter sees the basin from above, circles it many times and sends back pictures that show different tones. A rover drives into that basin and takes photographs close to the ground. It finds rounded stones and small pebbles that look like river rocks on Earth. It finds minerals that form only underwater. Each find is a gentle note in a long song. Together they tell us that water stayed for a long time and shaped the land. Then there are the sharper, more sudden marks. Places where the ground looks shattered. These can be the sign of a large strike. For instance, an impact from a rock coming at great speed. An orbiter can map the wide reach of such a strike. It sees rings and raised edges and broken lines. These marks are not always gentle, but they are part of the planet's memory. They tell us about times when change came quickly, in a sudden bright hour. The maps from orbit let us understand how far the shock travelled and which regions were touched. We also find strange raised areas that answer each other across a planet. These paired bulges are like two hands pressing on either side of a ball. When orbiters map the whole globe, they show these bulges clearly. Seeing them makes people wonder if a great tide once shaped the skin of the planet. A tide needs a large hand to pull at it, maybe a nearby world that once held the planet close. The maps do not say for sure, but they hold the shapes as evidence to be read. Sometimes images from orbit throw up small puzzles, straight lines on a plane, a right angle near a hill, a face-like shape in the way shadows fall. Such images invite us to slow down and look closer. A rover may be sent, or a scientist may study the light patterns to see if the shapes have natural causes. Often the shapes soften under closer view and reveal natural processes that make sharp-looking lines. Other times, small things remain curious enough to keep us asking gentle questions about who might have made them long ago. The instruments above also measure the thin air and the temperature and the way dust moves. They read the small breath of the planet, how the wind lifts dust into a soft veil, how seasons move the dust from one place to another, and how sunlight warms the ground for part of the day. Over many cycles, these readings add up. They show change in motion rather than a single frozen picture. They teach us that the surface was, and in some ways still is, an actor in slow change. As you listen now, picture a control room where people watch screens. The room is quiet, lit by small panels. Images arrive one after another like slow waves. People sit and point and whisper. They mark maps, they write notes, and they plan new paths for rovers. The work is patient. The discoveries come like small gifts, one by one. Each gift helps us feel closer to a place we cannot touch. Before this chapter closes, feel your breath match the slow turning of an orbiter above. Think of a rover's slow wheels pressing gentle prints into dust. Think of the maps that are made from light and shadow and how they guide our next steps. These tools are our eyes and hands across a wide, quiet sea. They do not hurry. They teach us to wait and to listen. In the next chapter, we will look at the strange marks that make some people think of water in great amounts, seas, rivers, and the soft history they leave. We will walk across imagined shores and listen to the echo of the waves that once were. For now, rest with the steady orbit of those patient machines and the calm maps they send. Chapter 10. Oceans, Rivers, and the Quiet Work of Water. Breathe in now and let your body settle deeper. Tonight we will walk slowly along the memory of water on a distant world. Move with me like a soft boat on calm waves. Let your eyes close if you wish. Picture gentle tides, slow rivers, and wide seas that once washed over low lands. Water is patient. It shapes things in small, steady ways. In this chapter, we will listen to how water wrote its history on rock and sand. Think of a wide plain near a shore. The wind moves thin lines of sand. Small ridges form and then fade. On Earth, rivers make meanders and deltas where they meet the sea. They carve slow loops and leave fan-shaped beds of small stones. If you imagine a planet with seas and rivers, you can picture those same features on a larger scale. Large basins fill with water. Rivers run toward them. Over time, the water drops the heavier stones first and carries the light stuff farther out. Slowly, layers build like pages in a book. Each page tells of a season, years of rain, then dry years, then a return of water. That is the quiet work water does. On some parts of Mars we see the shapes that look like old riverbeds. They wind gently and sometimes join together. In places the ground fans out in a delta, like the mouth of a river meeting a sea. Imagine standing on the edge of that delta. The air is thin, but it holds the scent of salt. Tiny ripples trace the shore where water once lapped. These deltas are not the loud proof of floods. They are the soft note of a place where water slowed and dropped its load. When researchers see them, they think of slow rivers and long seasons of rain. There are also wide basins that look like old seas. Their rims are low, and their floors are flat. When light touches them, the surface looks slightly different, as if the minerals there are soft or glassy. Some of those minerals form only in the presence of water. Clay is one of them. Clay forms when rock sits with water for a long time. It takes time and a gentle touch. When scientists find clay on Mars, they whisper quietly and kindly that water must have been steady there for a while. Picture a long canyon, deeper and wider than any on Earth. Valles Marineris is that canyon in our minds. Its length stretches like a long scar. Imagine a river long and slow cutting into the skin of a world. Over millions of years, water and movement of the ground can carve deep valleys. The walls of such canyons show layers like a stack of old blankets. Each layer holds clues. Some are dusty, some are rocky, some bear salts. As we read those layers, we learn of many seasons, times of flood and times of quiet. Now, let us think of ice. Water can hide as ice beneath the ground. In some places, maps show hidden pockets that feel like ice beds under dust. Imagine a frozen lake under clear glass. If the ice melts slowly, it can feed rivers that flow for a long time. If the ice stays, it still holds the memory of water. When instruments sense the hidden ice, they read a slow promise that water was there and can be again if heat returns. There is another quiet place to look. The minerals that hold the history of wet times. Some minerals only form when rocks meet water that is not too hot and not too cold. Those minerals are like small clocks. They tell us how long water stood in one place. Finding them is like finding an old pair of shoes. You know someone walked there for a while. The more of these minerals we find in a place, the clearer the idea that water stayed for long seasons. Imagine now a story of a single place. A small valley fills with rain and snow. Over a long time, a lake forms. Fish, if fish can live there, would swim. Plants, if plants can live there, would drink and grow. Later, the climate shifts and the water leaves. The lake dries into a cracked plain. Salt lines the edges. Rocks change to clay. Years pass. Then a rover comes rolling, small and careful, and finds rounded stones that look like they were rolled by water. The rover sends a picture. Someone in a dim room looks at the photo and feels a small thrill. The tiny rounded stones are proof of gentle moving water. This small scene connects the long past to the present moment. There are also signs that water once moved vast amounts, not just small streams. Some channels are so wide that they must have been fed by large volumes of water. Imagine sudden great floods, perhaps from melted ice or broken dams underground. Think of water rushing as if a giant had opened a gate. Those floods would leave wide scars and deep deposits of sand and stone. The maps from orbit sometimes show patterns that match both slow rivers and sudden floods. Holding both ideas in your mind is okay. Water can be many things over time, slow and steady, sudden and strong. Now relax and imagine the sound of water in that world. Not the roar of a storm, but the steady, soft lap of waves on a shore. Hear it as a memory recorded in rock. Hear it as a calm voice saying, "I was here." Each ripple leaves a faint trace. Each tiny stone moved once, then stopped. When we look much later, the traces are small but true. Before we end this chapter, hold a gentle promise. Later we will sit with what water might mean for life, for cities, and for the marks people imagine. We will ask calmly whether places that held water might once have held life or signs of life. We will also look at how long water might have lasted, and how a warm, wet world could change into a cold, dry one. For now, let the image of slow rivers and wide seas settle in your mind like soft light. As you breathe slowly, feel the planet's memory of water like a warm blanket folded and stored away. The blanket can be brought out again with heat. The ice can melt. The salts can dissolve. The story of water is not always ended. It waits. Keep that patient hope as you drift. The tale will continue in the next chapters, and each one will reveal another calm piece of the past. Chapter 11. The Mountains and Valleys of Memory. Take a slow breath now, letting your body sink into comfort. Tonight we move from water to the land itself. Imagine a world shaped not only by rivers and oceans, but also by rising peaks and stretching valleys. These mountains and valleys are like memories frozen in stone. They tell stories that have lasted millions of years, quietly waiting for someone to notice. Picture a vast plain, smooth and wide. Far in the distance, jagged shapes rise toward the sky. They are mountains, ancient and silent. Some are volcanoes, long gone, their slopes marked by flows of cooled lava. Others are folded ranges bent and cracked by forces we may only guess at. On this planet, these shapes are not just scenery, they are records of energy and change, of fire and pressure, of the planet's slow and steady life. Now imagine a single mountain, enormous and solitary. Olympus Mons rises taller than any mountain on Earth. Its sides stretch gently like a hill compared to its height. The peak is vast, flat, and slightly tilted, as though a giant had laid it down carefully. This is not just rock, it is history. It formed over millions of years, a monument to molten forces that pushed upward from the planet's core. Slowly, over time, winds carved soft patterns into its surface, dust collected in lines, and stones settled in quiet piles. Between these peaks lie valleys. Some are narrow and deep, cut by movement of the crust itself. Some are wide and gentle, shaped perhaps by floods of water long ago. Imagine standing in one of these valleys. The air is thin and still. Rocks of many sizes lie scattered, some smooth, some jagged. Tiny patterns on the stones hint at water's past touch. You can almost hear the echoes of rivers that once ran here, soft and low, moving like whispers. Mountains and valleys also tell us about heat and movement inside a planet. When a planet is young, the interior is warm and active. Magma rises in some places, creating volcanoes. In other places, the crust cracks and shifts, lifting slabs of rock to form peaks. Sometimes one side rises faster than the other, leaving a tilt, a permanent slope that marks the memory of stress. On Mars, these features are extreme. Some regions show tilted layers, huge faults, and cliffs that stretch for hundreds of miles. These are not accidents. They are the evidence of powerful forces quietly recorded over eons. Look now at the shadows cast by these peaks. Shadows are soft, stretching slowly as the light moves. Notice the gentle slopes, the soft ridges that rise and fall like quiet waves frozen in time. Even in the harshest landscape, there is calmness in the rhythm of rock. Each layer tells a story. Volcanic eruptions, landslides, wind-blown dust, long periods of quiet, perhaps millions of years where nothing changed, but the slow settling of stones. Imagine too the collisions that shaped valleys. Sometimes rocks fell from high cliffs, or meteorites struck, sending echoes of force across the plains. These impacts left craters, some small, some vast. In the largest craters, valleys opened up, rivers may have flowed, and sediments collected. Look closely at the rim of a crater. The edges are jagged, yet smooth in places, where wind and dust have softened the edges. Each detail is a quiet note in a symphony written over millions of years. Some mountains show scars of ancient water. Channels carved like fingers run down their sides. These channels might have held rain, melted ice, or small streams. Imagine snow collecting on a peak, melting slowly, trickling down through the channels, shaping the land softly but persistently. Those channels tell a story of a world that was not always dry, a world where water and rock work together to leave a memory. Now consider the volcanic plains. Lava can flow like water, smoothing valleys, filling craters, and creating flat regions. Over time, dust and wind cover the flows, softening their lines. Each plain, each slope, is a page of a slow story, written by heat, pressure, and time. When scientists look at these plains, they can read the age of rocks, the sequence of eruptions, and the quiet rhythm of creation and change. Finally, imagine the view from above. From orbit, the mountains rise and valleys fall, forming patterns like the lines of a delicate painting. The northern plains are smooth, calm, and wide. The southern highlands are jagged, rugged, and old. The contrast is sharp, almost like two different worlds side by side, yet part of the same planet. This division is a whisper of the planet's violent past, of impacts and forces that shaped it beyond human imagination. As you settle in, let the mountains and valleys of this distant world fill your mind with calm. Think of the slow work of forces that rise and fall, that carve and shape without hurry. Imagine the quiet patience of rock, and let your thoughts drift with the gentle rhythm of this ancient land. Chapter 12. The Winds and the Dust. Take a deep breath and let yourself sink further into relaxation. As we move on, imagine not the solid mountains and valleys, but the soft, flowing forces that shape a planet over time, the winds and the dust. On a world like Mars, these elements are quiet, constant, and patient, working slowly to rewrite the landscape in ways both subtle and profound. Picture the wind as a gentle hand, moving across plains and slopes. Sometimes it is soft, brushing lightly over rocks and fine dust, lifting particles into the air and carrying them slowly across valleys. Other times, it grows stronger, a persistent force that sweeps sand and dust into swirling patterns, forming ripples and dunes that shift over days, months, and years. The movement of these tiny particles might seem small, almost invisible, yet over millions of years, they reshape everything. A canyon's edges soften, a crater's floor smooths, and plains gain a new surface, layer upon layer, like pages accumulating quietly in a book. Imagine standing on one of these plains. Dust is everywhere, fine and soft, coating every surface. You reach down and touch it. It feels like flour, light, and almost alive as it shifts beneath your fingertips. Look toward the horizon, and you can see the shapes of dunes rising and falling, a silent dance of wind and sand. These patterns are never still, and yet they are always the same. Each dune has a history, each curve a memory of winds that blew long before you arrived. In some places, dust storms gather, enormous and powerful. They can stretch across hundreds of miles, darkening the sky and lifting particles into a thick orange haze. Inside, everything feels muffled, the landscape blurred, shadows softened. Yet even in these storms, there is calm, a slow, rolling rhythm. Dust rises, moves and falls, shaping mountains, plains and valleys over thousands of years. The storms are both destructive and creative, wearing down the old surfaces and laying the foundation for new forms. Now consider the way dust interacts with the land. On slopes, it accumulates in hollows, softening rough edges. On flat plains, it gathers into patterns, forming lines, waves and ridges. In craters, it settles in layers, capturing impressions of impacts, ancient flows, and winds long gone. Dust is the planet's memory, preserving moments that might otherwise be lost. Each particle carries a story of the forces that moved it, the skies that blew it, and the lands that received it. Winds also carry particles from far away. A storm on one side of the planet can lift dust that drifts thousands of miles, settling softly on distant peaks or deep valleys. Over time, these migrations of dust create a shared story, connecting one region to another. Mountains that once stood bare become covered in soft layers, valleys fill gently, and plains gain new textures. The entire surface of the planet is rewritten slowly, endlessly by invisible hands. Think about the fine lines that winds carve into rocks. A sharp stone, exposed for thousands of years, shows tiny grooves, scratches, and marks. These marks are not random. They are the result of countless collisions with dust particles moved by wind. Each line is a record of the invisible dance between air and earth. Even the largest rocks, immobile and silent, carry the memory of winds that blew when the planet was young. Now imagine the sky above. The dust carried in the atmosphere scatters light, creating soft hues and gentle glows. Sunrise and sunset cast a quiet, almost dreamlike tone across the landscape. Shadows lengthen, and the dust reflects light like a thin veil, softening the edges of mountains and valleys. The interplay of wind, dust, and light transforms the planet into a living painting, a canvas that changes subtly each day and night. Winds and dust also shape canyons and channels. Even the largest valleys are affected over time. Dust settles in hollows, softening jagged walls. Fine particles carried by winds slowly abrade surfaces, wearing down sharp cliffs into smooth slopes. Channels carved by ancient water flows are filled with layers of dust, preserving a quiet record of past rivers and floods. The process is slow, almost imperceptible, yet over millions of years it is unstoppable. As you breathe slowly and deeply, imagine the dust carried across oceans of stone, settling gently, layering softly, smoothing and shaping. Picture winds tracing patterns in craters, over plains and across mountain slopes. The planet is alive in its stillness, moving with patience, telling its story quietly, one grain at a time. The wind is never rushed. Dust never hurries. They work together with an elegance that cannot be hurried or forced. In their rhythm there is calm, and in their movement there is the beauty of a world quietly remembering itself. Let your mind follow these drifting grains, tracing the invisible currents, and feel yourself become part of this gentle, patient flow. Chapter 13. The Silent Rivers of Ice. Let your body relax deeper, feeling the calm settle over your shoulders and arms. Tonight, as we continue our journey across this ancient and mysterious world, we shift our focus from the winds and dust to the silent rivers of ice that shaped the land over millions of years. Imagine vast frozen rivers, slow-moving and unyielding, stretching across plains and valleys, carving the surface in ways both gentle and powerful. Long ago, before the planet's atmosphere thinned and the oceans froze, these rivers of ice may have been alive with motion. As temperatures dropped, water collected in the highlands, forming glaciers that crept slowly across the surface. These glaciers moved like living beings, immense and patient, reshaping mountains, smoothing valleys, and leaving behind ridges and grooves that still tell their story today. Visualize standing at the edge of one of these frozen rivers. The ice stretches far into the distance, gleaming faintly in the soft light. Its surface is uneven, cracked, and layered, a record of centuries of accumulation and slow movement. Look closer, and you can see faint lines etched into the ice, telling of the forces that molded it. These lines are like fingerprints, unique and precise, showing the path the ice has taken, the obstacles it overcame, and the pressure it endured. Even as the ice slowly advanced, it carried rocks and dust embedded within it. Each stone scraped the land beneath, leaving a pattern of scratches and striations. These marks are subtle but permanent, evidence of the power hidden in such quiet, patient forces. Valleys deepened, cliffs softened, and plains were flattened under the weight of the ice, creating landscapes that would last long after the rivers themselves disappeared. Now imagine the edges of these glaciers. Where they meet the plains, ice melts slowly, releasing water that travels through small channels and forming temporary streams. These meltwaters carve tiny pathways, gathering dust, rocks, and minerals along the way. Over time, these small channels join, forming larger paths that eventually empty into frozen seas or lowlands. The movement is gradual, almost imperceptible, but it reshapes the terrain in a quiet, continuous way. Some of the ice rivers were enormous, stretching hundreds of miles. Their weight pressed down on the crust beneath, creating bulges and depressions. These pressures cause cracks and shifts in the surface, leaving behind faults and ridges that mark the ancient flow of ice. Even after the glaciers receded, these marks remained, silent reminders of a world that was once alive with frozen motion. Picture the glacier's slow retreat. As temperatures rose or the planet's orbit changed, ice began to melt, leaving behind lakes and pools that gradually evaporated or froze again. The melting process was never uniform. Some areas held ice for longer, forming layered deposits that preserved the history of countless seasons. The surface became a patchwork of frozen remnants, dust, and small rocks, creating textures that tell stories of time and movement. The ice also shaped canyons and valleys in dramatic ways. Large rivers of frozen water carved deep channels, leaving behind U-shaped valleys, cliffs, and ridges. These formations, once massive and imposing, now stand as silent monuments, frozen in time, revealing the history of the planet's slow, patient transformation. Imagine walking through one of these valleys, the walls towering on either side, each layer of rock and ice a record of ancient flows, pressures, and shifts. In some places, the ice trapped dust and rocks, preserving them like tiny time capsules. Fossils of the surface, hidden for millions of years, may lie buried within these layers, waiting for discovery. Each fragment tells a story, not just of the ice itself, but of the forces, landscapes, and perhaps even living things that existed long before the ice arrived. Think about the sound of this landscape. There is none. The ice moves silently, the valleys are quiet, and even the wind carries only a faint hollow murmur over frozen plains. Yet within this silence there is movement, a hidden life that shapes the surface in ways slow and deliberate. The planet speaks in whispers, through patterns in ice, dust, and stone, and it requires patience to listen. Now, as you imagine these silent rivers of ice, picture them merging with the dust and winds we explored in the previous chapter. Ice carries dust along its path, redistributing particles across plains and valleys. Wind picks up loose dust left by melting ice, forming dunes and ridges, smoothing the land further. Together, these forces, wind, dust, and ice, create a delicate balance, reshaping the world over millions of years, layer by layer, silently, without hurry. Take another deep breath. Let yourself feel the patience of ice, the quiet power of glaciers, and the way they slowly transform the land. Each movement, each melting, each frozen river tells a story of time and persistence. Allow your mind to wander through these silent valleys, following the flow of ancient ice, and imagine yourself drifting along with it, calm, weightless, and at peace. Chapter 14. The Story Written in Craters. Take a slow breath now, letting the air move gently in and out. Tonight we turn our attention to the marks left by impacts, the craters that cover the surface of this quiet world. Each crater is like a page in a very old book. It tells of collisions, of sudden moments of great force, and of the long years of silence that followed. These craters are not just holes in the ground. They are memories, stamped deep into the crust, holding the history of both violence and patience. Imagine standing at the rim of a large crater. The edge is high and sharp in some places, but worn down and softened in others. Rocks are scattered all around, thrown outward when something from space struck the surface long ago. At the centre, the ground may rise again in a peak, formed when the surface rebounded after the great impact. The shape is simple yet powerful, circles, lines and slopes that speak of sudden energy frozen into stone. Now think of how these craters formed. For millions of years, the planet was struck by rocks and icy bodies from space. Some were small, leaving only shallow dents. Others were enormous, blasting out wide basins and reshaping entire regions. When these impacts happened, they were loud and destructive. But after the dust settled, silence returned. The crater remained, a reminder of a single instant that changed the land forever. Each crater carries its own story. Fresh craters look sharp, with crisp edges and deep walls. Over time, though, winds and dust soften them. Sediments settle inside, sometimes filling them completely. Craters that once looked violent become calm and quiet, their outlines faint, their rims barely visible. This slow fading is another layer of the story, showing how time and gentle forces can transform even the most violent scars. Some craters are so large they look like seas. From above, they stretch for hundreds of miles, their edges forming vast circles. Within them, smaller craters often appear as if later impacts found the same spot. These giant basins may have once held lakes or seas of water or ice, filling with sediment, creating layers that preserve the memory of both impact and water. Imagine walking across such a basin, flat, wide, endless, knowing that beneath your feet lies a record of both sudden destruction and long, quiet rebuilding. Craters also help us measure time. A surface with many craters is old, marked by countless impacts. A surface with few craters is younger, reshaped by other forces like lava, wind, or ice. By studying the number and shape of craters, we can read the age of different regions like counting rings in a tree. Each crater is a number, a mark, a clue to the length of time that has passed. Now picture the patterns of craters across the land. Some overlap, with newer ones cutting into older ones. Some are aligned in chains, formed when a broken object struck the planet piece by piece. Others are double or triple, showing complex impacts that unfolded in moments. From orbit, the surface looks like a tapestry, stitched with circles of every size. Up close, each one feels vast and quiet, a hollow space filled with shadows and memory. Inside craters, life once had its best chances. When water was present, craters could trap it, forming lakes. Sediments collected at the bottom, rich with minerals, perhaps sheltering signs of past life. Even after the water dried, the layers remain, preserved like pages in a sealed jar. This is why scientists look to craters when searching for signs of what might have once lived there. Each one is more than an impact. It is a container of history. Some craters reveal their power through the rocks they leave behind. When an impact happens, the heat and force are so great that rocks melt, fracture, and sometimes even transform into new minerals. Glassy surfaces form, shocked crystals appear, and fragments scatter across the land. These pieces are like notes left behind, evidence of the great violence of the moment. Yet as years pass, even these sharp, broken fragments are softened by wind, dust, and ice, until they become part of the calm landscape once again. As you imagine these craters, think of the balance they represent. They are sudden, violent beginnings, followed by millions of years of quiet endurance. They show how even the most destructive moments can be softened by time, how silence and patience can transform scars into gentle shapes. Now breathe deeply and picture yourself walking slowly around a crater's edge. The slope is steady, the view vast. Shadows stretch across the interior, cool and calm. Each step you take carries you along the rim of an ancient memory. Each stone under your feet is a fragment of a story written long before you arrived. The crater is quiet now, but its silence speaks of both destruction and survival. Let this image rest in your mind, a world covered in circles, each one a mark of time, each one a memory. Impacts may come suddenly, but the calm that follows lasts far longer. In that calm, there is peace. In that patience, there is wisdom. As you drift into rest, let yourself carry that balance, the reminder that even the deepest scars can be softened by time. Chapter 15. The Hidden Rivers Beneath the Dust. Take a slow breath and let yourself drift further into the story of this world. Tonight, we go beneath the surface to where hidden waters may still linger. The land we see above is dry and silent, but deep under the dust and rock the story continues. It is a story of rivers, of ice, and of the quiet persistence of water. Imagine standing in a wide, empty plain. At first glance, it looks lifeless, covered only in sand and broken stone. But if you look carefully, you begin to see patterns carved into the ground. Long, winding channels cut across the surface. Some are shallow and faint, others are deep and wide, as if great floods once rushed through them. These are not random lines. They are paths, written by water long ago. Think of how these channels formed. At times, water may have burst out from underground, flowing quickly across the land before vanishing again. At other times, slow streams may have moved quietly for thousands of years, shaping the valleys and plains. Each curve, each branching path, tells us that water once had the power to change this world. Now picture the hidden water that may still remain. Beneath the dust, beneath the frozen soil, there are layers where ice lies trapped. Some scientists believe there may even be liquid water, locked away deep under pressure, warmed by the faint heat of the planet's core. If this is true, then the planet is not only a world of stone, it is a world that still breathes in its own hidden way. Let yourself imagine walking down into one of these ancient channels. The walls rise high on either side, cut smooth by flowing water. The floor beneath you is covered in layers of silt, soft and fine, carried here by currents long ago. You can almost hear the echo of water rushing past, though the channel is silent now. The air is thin, the sky above is pale, but the memory of movement remains. Some of these channels lead to wide basins. Imagine standing in one of them, a space so large it feels like a dried sea. In the past, water may have filled it, reflecting the sky, hosting life, and leaving behind layers of clay and mineral. Even after the water disappeared, the signs remain, waiting quietly to be read. Now think of the hidden cycles. On this world, ice lies near the poles, bright and cold. In warmer times, some of it may have melted, running across the land, carving the valleys and channels we see today. When the air grew colder again, the water froze once more, locking itself away until the next cycle. It is a rhythm of freezing and melting, of hiding and returning, repeating across ages too long for us to count. Beneath the surface, the story deepens. Pressure and warmth may still allow water to remain liquid in secret places. These underground lakes, if they exist, are like hidden hearts, beating slowly in the quiet of the planet. They may hold the last traces of life, or perhaps they simply wait, still and patient, for a future when the world can awaken again. Imagine kneeling down and placing your hand on the ground. You cannot see what lies beneath, but you can feel the possibility. Layers of dust and stone may seem silent, but within them are clues. Minerals formed in water, salts left behind when it dried, patterns that only moving streams can make. The surface may be dry, but the memory of water is everywhere. Now take another deep breath. Think of the balance we see here, a world that looks lifeless above, yet hides a deep history below. Just as craters carry the memory of impacts, these channels and underground waters carry the memory of flow, of change, of quiet persistence. Even when conditions grow harsh, water finds a way to endure. Picture this world from far above. The channels stretch like veins across the land, long lines and branches reaching in every direction. They connect basins to valleys, mountains to plains like a vast silent map. From space they look empty, but up close, each one is a reminder that this planet once carried rivers, floods, and perhaps even seas. As you rest now, let this image stay with you. A quiet world holding hidden rivers beneath its skin. A world where silence covers movement, and where the story of water continues even in secret. Just as the planet hides its flow under dust and ice, so too do we sometimes carry hidden rivers within ourselves, quiet strengths waiting to be seen. Breathe slowly and let yourself drift. The channels remain, the water waits, and the story continues. Chapter 16. The Mountains of Fire. Take a slow breath in and let it out gently. Tonight we rise from the hidden rivers beneath the ground and look upward toward the tallest shapes on this quiet world. The volcanoes. They're not small hills, not even simple mountains. They're giants, stretching so high and so wide that they dwarf anything on Earth. They are the frozen reminders of a time when fire and molten rock poured across the land. Imagine standing at the base of one of these mountains of fire. The ground slopes upwards so slowly that you can walk for hours and still be climbing. The summit is so far away it seems to touch the edge of the sky. This is a shield volcano, built layer by layer, eruption by eruption, as lava spread out and cooled, forming gentle slopes that stretch across hundreds of miles. The most famous of them, Olympus Mons, is the largest volcano in the solar system. It rises nearly 3 times higher than Mount Everest and is as wide as the state of Arizona. To stand at its base would feel like standing at the foot of an entire continent. Now picture the time when these volcanoes were alive. Molten rock, heated deep within the planet, forced its way upward, breaking through cracks, spilling out across the surface. The flows moved slowly but powerfully, covering valleys, filling lowlands, and creating new plains. Each eruption added another layer, and over millions of years the mountains grew taller and wider, reaching heights beyond imagination. But the story of fire on this planet is not just one of slow, steady growth. Some eruptions were violent. Imagine fountains of lava shooting into the thin sky, glowing rivers racing down the slopes, clouds of ash spreading for miles. The land shook, the air burned, and the surface was reshaped in hours. For a time, the world was alive with fire. Now let yourself see the frozen remains. The volcanoes are silent today. Their peaks are cold, their lava fields hardened into stone. Craters mark their tops, where the last eruptions left deep openings. The slopes are carved with valleys where lava once flowed but now lie still and dark. From space, these volcanoes look like scars of fire, massive and unmoving, reminders of energy that once shook the planet. Take a moment to imagine walking across a lava plain. The ground is rough, broken into sharp ridges and wide, flat fields. In some places, tunnels lie beneath the surface, hollow channels where lava once rushed like rivers before draining away. These lava tubes are like caves, stretching for miles underground. They could shelter life, protect from radiation, and even serve as safe places for future travellers. The fire that once destroyed also left behind spaces where survival might still be possible. The volcanoes also tell us about the heart of this planet. Long ago, its core was warmer, its interior more active. Heat pushed upward, melting rock and driving eruptions. Over time, the core cooled, the heat faded, and the volcanoes grew quiet. The silence we see today is the end of that long story of fire. But the mountains remain, eternal monuments to what once was. Now think about the balance between fire and water. The rivers carved valleys, while the volcanoes raised mountains. In some places the two met. Lava flowed into channels, blocking water, forming lakes. Explosions of steam may have blasted craters when fire met ice. These moments of conflict shape the surface in ways we can still see. Each feature, the channels, the plains, the mountains, is a line in the planet's long history, written by both fire and water. As you picture this, take another slow breath. Imagine yourself standing on a high slope of one of these giant volcanoes. The land stretches endlessly below. You see plains covered with ancient flows, valleys cut by rivers, and far away, other volcanoes rising like islands in a sea of stone. The sky above is pale, the horizon curved. The silence is complete, but the ground beneath your feet holds memories of fire. From orbit, the view is even more powerful. The volcanoes rise so high, they cast shadows across the surface. They form a region known as Tharsis, a vast plateau where many giants cluster together. It is as if the planet gathered all its strength in one place, pushing upward again and again, leaving behind a crown of fire that is now frozen in stone. Let this image rest in your mind. A world that once roared with molten fire, now quiet, its mountains still standing. The volcanoes teach us about cycles, how heat rises, shapes the land, and then fades into silence. They remind us that even the most powerful forces can come to rest, leaving behind structures that last for ages. As you drift toward rest, think of the balance between silence and fire, stillness and change. The mountains of fire may no longer burn, but they continue to tell their story, written in stone across the face of this ancient world. Chapter 17. The Vanished Sky. Take a gentle breath in and slowly let it out. Tonight we lift our eyes upward, not to the ground, not to the mountains, but to the sky above this ancient world. It may look empty now, thin and pale, but long ago it was full. The sky of Maldek, or what we now know as Mars, was once heavy, alive, and rich with air. It may have carried clouds, storms, and even rain. It may have looked more like the sky you know on Earth than the quiet, faded sky we see today. Imagine standing on this world billions of years ago. The sun is warmer in the sky, and the air around you is thicker, pressing gently on your skin. You hear the soft sound of wind moving across wide plains, carrying dust and grains of sand. Clouds drift above, white and heavy, shading the ground. When they gather and darken, rain begins to fall, tapping against the rocks, flowing into the valleys, feeding the rivers that cut through the land. The air smells of dust and water, a living scent. This was not always a dry, empty world. The sky once had weight and warmth. Scientists believe that the atmosphere was thick enough to hold heat, thick enough to let water flow for millions of years. Rivers ran, lakes filled, and maybe even seas spread wide across the surface. The sky gave protection too, shielding the land from harsh sunlight and cosmic rays, keeping the world safe and stable. But slowly that sky began to change. The planet's core cooled, the magnetic field grew weak, and without protection, the solar wind, the steady stream of particles from the sun, began to strip the air away. Bit by bit, the sky thinned. The heavy blanket became a fragile veil. The clouds disappeared, the rain stopped, and the rivers dried. What had once been a living sky became pale and empty, letting the cold in and the warmth escape. Now, when you look up from the surface, the sky's a soft orange, coloured by the dust that floats endlessly through the thin air. The sun looks smaller, colder, and its warmth fades quickly into space. The winds still blow, but they carry only dust, never rain. Dust storms rise, sometimes covering the whole planet, turning the thin air into a haze of red and brown. These storms remind us of what was lost, the power of air and sky, now reduced to shadows of what once was. Picture yourself standing in such a storm. The air is thin, and though you could not breathe it, you can feel it brushing against your skin. The dust fills the horizon, turning day into twilight. The ground disappears under a moving sea of red. The storm howls across plains and valleys, lifting grains of sand that have lain still for ages. And then, as quickly as it came, it fades, leaving silence once more. But imagine again the ancient days, when the sky was alive. Imagine rain filling craters, streams running from high cliffs, thunder rolling across wide plains, the sound of water, the weight of clouds, the sight of a blue or grey sky overhead. It was a world that breathed, a world that carried the signs of life. The vanished sky also shaped the fate of this world. Without a thick atmosphere, water could not last. Lakes dried, rivers shrank, and seas disappeared. Without protection, the land was scarred by radiation and left bare. The life that may have once begun here struggled or vanished. The sky, which had given so much, slowly abandoned the land. And yet, the traces remain. In dry valleys, we see channels carved by flowing water. In craters, we see sediments left by ancient lakes. In the soil, we find minerals that could only have formed in the presence of water. Each trace is a whisper from the old sky, telling us that it was once heavy and alive. Now take a slow breath and picture yourself lying on the surface of this world, looking up at its pale sky. The sun glows faintly through the thin air. Stars appear even in daytime since the atmosphere is so weak. There is silence, deep and endless, but in your mind you can still imagine the past. Clouds drifting, storms rolling, rain falling, thunder echoing. A vanished sky, remembered only in stone and dust. Let this image rest with you, the reminder that even the sky can change, that what feels eternal may fade, and that silence often follows after fullness. Yet in that silence the story remains, written in the valleys and the dust, waiting for us to read. Chapter 18. The Lost Waters. Take a slow breath now, letting it flow gently in and out. Tonight we turn our thoughts toward the waters that once shaped this silent world. Though the land is dry today, cracked and dusty, there was a time when Maldek, what we now see as Mars, held lakes, rivers, and perhaps even wide seas. These waters carved valleys, filled basins, and gave the world a softer face. They are gone now, but their memory still rests in the stones. Imagine walking across a wide plain, the air calm around you. At your feet, the ground looks smooth and flat, but if you look closer, you see tiny ripples frozen in stone. These are marks left by flowing water long ago, like fingerprints pressed into the land. They tell us that streams once moved here, carrying sand and pebbles, shaping the ground. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear it, the steady sound of water trickling, filling the silence with life. Now picture a valley. Its walls are steep, its floor wide and open, stretching far into the distance. This is not the work of wind or ice alone. This is the work of rivers, carving their way through rock for millions of years. The river that once flowed here is gone, but the valley remains, a deep scar across the land. If you listen in your mind, you may hear it again. The rush of water, the echo of stones rolling along with the current, the calm after a flood. Some places hold even greater stories. Vast basins stretch across the planet so wide they look like seas. Scientists believe that in the distant past these basins may have been filled with water, great oceans that covered much of the northern hemisphere. Imagine standing at the shore of such a sea. The horizon stretches wide, the air heavy with mist, and waves crash gently against the land. The smell of salt and minerals drifts on the wind. Above, clouds gather heavy with rain. It is a living world, full and rich. The lakes and seas did more than shape the land. They may have sheltered life. In the still, quiet waters of a crater lake, minerals settled at the bottom, layering over time, keeping safe whatever lived there. If tiny life forms once swam in those waters, their traces may still be locked in the rocks waiting to be found. Even though the lakes are dry now, their beds remain like sealed jars, holding secrets of the past. But the waters did not last. As the sky thinned, the air grew too weak to hold them. The sea shrank, the rivers dried, and the lakes turned to dust. Some water sank deep underground, hidden in ice and frozen soil. Some escaped into space, carried away by the solar wind. What was once a world of flowing rivers became a world of silence and stone. Still, the marks of those waters are everywhere. Channels run across plains, twisting and turning, showing where rivers once meandered. Deltas spread at the mouths of old rivers, where streams once emptied into larger lakes or seas, dropping their loads of sand and clay. Layer upon layer, the rocks tell us the story of water, where it flowed, where it pooled, and how it vanished. Now, take a slow breath and picture yourself walking through the bed of an ancient lake. The ground is flat and wide, stretching like a silent plain. Stones lie scattered, smoothed by long-forgotten waves. In the distance, cliffs rise where shorelines once stood, etched by the rise and fall of water levels over the ages. Though it is dry now, your mind fills it with water once more, and the silence is replaced by the soft lap of waves. Even in the present, traces of water remain. At the poles, great caps of ice still sit, gleaming white in the pale light. Beneath the surface, hidden layers of frozen water rest, locked in soil and rock. And in recent times, we have even seen signs that liquid water may still flow in thin streams, dark lines that appear and disappear with the seasons. Though the seas are gone, water has not completely abandoned this world. The lost waters are more than a memory. They are a reminder of how fragile world can be, how even oceans can vanish when the sky changes and the warmth fades. They show us that nothing is fixed forever, that time reshapes even the most powerful forces, and yet they also whisper of possibility. If waters once flowed here, perhaps they may one day return, whether by nature's hand or by ours. Now breathe deeply and picture the world as it once was. Blue seas stretching wide, rivers glistening in the sunlight, lakes shining in craters, clouds drifting above. Then picture it as it is now, quiet, dry, and still. Between these two visions lies the story of change, of loss, and of time. Let this thought carry you, that even when something is gone, its traces remain. The land remembers, the stones remember, and in silence, the story is still told. The waters may be lost, but their presence is written across the face of this world, waiting for us to listen. Chapter 19. The Frozen Secrets. Take a slow breath and let it ease out gently. Tonight we travel to the coldest corners of this silent world, where the story of water has not ended, but only gone quiet. The seas and rivers may be gone, but ice still remains, locked in the soil, buried in rock and gathered at the poles. These frozen stores are the last guardians of the world's water, keeping safe what once filled the valleys and plains. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of the polar caps. Before you stretches a landscape of white, shining softly under the pale light of the distant sun. The air is thin and sharp, the ground solid and still. These caps are made of layers, ice mixed with dust, stacked one upon another, like pages of a frozen book. Each layer tells a story, of winters and summers, of storms and calms, of a world that still changes, even if very slowly. Look closer, and you see the caps are not simple blocks of ice. They are carved with cliffs, ridges and spirals that stretch for miles. Winds sweep across them, shaping the surface, revealing some layers while burying others. From orbit, these patterns look like fingerprints pressed into the land, the mark of both water and time. Now turn your thoughts below the surface. Hidden beneath soil and rock, ice lies buried, trapped for millions of years. It doesn't shine like the caps above, but it rests quietly, waiting. In some places, whole glaciers may sleep under layers of dust preserved by the cold. In others, thin sheets of ice line the ground, fragile but still holding the memory of water. There are even hints that beneath all this ice, liquid water may still exist. Deep under the polar caps, where pressure builds and salts mix with ice, small pockets of liquid may remain. They would not be like the lakes we know on Earth, but they would still be water, dark, hidden, and perhaps the last places where life could still survive. The thought itself is powerful, that beneath the silence and the cold, there may still be something moving, something alive. Picture yourself walking across one of these polar plains. The horizon is endless, the surface smooth but cold and hard. The wind whips fine dust across the ice, painting faint lines in the white. With each step you hear the crunch beneath your feet, a reminder that even here, where all seems lifeless, water still rests. The silence is deep, yet you can feel the weight of what lies beneath. The frozen secrets do not only belong to the poles. Across the planet, ice is hidden in shadows. In deep craters where the sun never reaches, frost clings to the ground, thin but steady. In high cliffs, white streaks appear where layers of ice have been exposed. Even in the soil itself, ice crystals wait, scattered like grains of salt, invisible until revealed. These frozen traces remind us that water never truly left. It only changed, adapting to the thin air and cold sky. Where once it flowed freely, now it hides in stillness. Where once it covered wide seas, now it gathers in silence. But it is still here, a quiet companion to the dust and stone. Now breathe slowly and think about the passage of time. These polar caps and hidden glaciers have grown and shrunk over millions of years. As the tilt of the planet shifted, the poles received more or less sunlight. In warmer times, ice melted and spread. In colder times, it built up and grew. The layers record these changes one atop another, keeping track of the rhythms of the world. To read them is to read the heartbeat of a planet. The frozen secrets are more than a reminder of the past. They're also a promise for the future. If humans one day set foot here, it is the ice they will seek. From it, they could drink, grow food, and even make fuel. The survival of future travelers may depend on these quiet, hidden reserves. What was once the last breath of an ancient world could become the first breath of a new chapter for us. As you let your body relax, picture once more the white caps shining at the poles, the hidden ice beneath the soil, the faint frost in shadows. Imagine how, beneath silence and cold, water still lingers, waiting. Though it is frozen, it carries the memory of seas, rivers and rains that once gave life to this place. Let this thought rest in your mind, that even when something seems gone, it may not be lost forever. Sometimes it only changes form, hiding, waiting, enduring. The frozen secrets of Maldek, of Mars, are proof of endurance, proof that even in silence, life's memory can remain. Chapter 20. The Whispering Winds. Take a slow, deep breath, letting it flow gently in and out. Tonight we turn our attention to the air itself, thin and almost invisible, yet powerful enough to move mountains of dust and sand across the surface. The winds of Maldek are quiet most of the time, a soft whisper against rocks and craters, but sometimes they rise into storms, shaping the land, sculpting the dunes, and reminding us that even a seemingly empty world is alive with motion. Imagine standing on a flat plain, the sky pale above you. The ground is dry, cracked in some places, smooth in others. A faint wind brushes your skin, carrying tiny grains of dust. At first, it seems gentle, barely noticeable. But look closer, and you can see the dance of particles lifted from the surface, spinning in spirals, forming thin ribbons that stretch across the horizon. Each grain of dust is small, almost invisible, yet together they tell a story of constant change. The winds have a memory. They follow patterns shaped by the shape of the land, by craters, ridges and valleys. In narrow canyons they rush faster, forming tiny whirlwinds that twist and turn. Across open plains they move slower, dragging dust in long, quiet sweeps. Over millions of years, these movements carve patterns into the surface. Dunes rise, valleys shift, and even rocks are polished smooth, evidence of a persistent, patient force. Now think of the great storms, when the wind grows stronger, when the dust rises in clouds so thick that the sun becomes a dim circle in the sky. These storms can cover entire regions, moving at hundreds of miles per hour, shaping hills and craters in a single season. Sand climbs crater walls, dust buries old rocks, and the landscape is remade quietly but relentlessly. From above, these storms appear as shifting blankets, moving slowly yet powerfully, leaving the land forever changed. Even the tiniest gust can leave a mark. Dust settles in layers over the rocks and soil, recording the passage of time. When scientists study these layers, they can read the story of countless winds, of storms long past and gentle breezes that persisted for years. Every ridge and ripple in the dust carries history, a memory written not in words, but in movement. Imagine the sound of the wind as it moves across the surface. It is never loud in the way a storm on Earth might be. Instead, it whispers, hums and sighs. It brushes against rocks, slides over craters, and echoes through canyons. Even when the air is thin and the world quiet, the sound of wind gives life to the stillness. It tells a story without words, a language written in motion and rhythm. The wind interacts with other forces as well. When it lifts dust into the air, it changes the temperature of the surface, subtly reshaping how heat and cold move across the land. It carries minerals from one place to another, spreading the remnants of rocks, ice, and soil across vast distances. Over time, the wind erases old marks and creates new ones. Craters soften, dunes shift, and the landscape is in constant conversation with the air. Now picture the wind at the poles, brushing against the ice and snow, shaping the frozen layers into sharp ridges and smooth valleys. Even here, where temperatures are bitterly cold, the wind is active, carving patterns that can only be understood by those who watch patiently. Dust may drift across the ice, leaving streaks of brown and red, and the sunlight reflects off the surfaces in delicate, ever-changing ways. The winds remind us of balance. They are not chaotic without reason. Each gust follows natural rules, moving according to pressure, temperature, and the shape of the world. Even the fiercest storm eventually calms, leaving silence in its wake. And in that silence, the land holds the memory of what has passed, waiting for the next whisper, the next brush of air to continue the story. Take a moment to imagine walking through this windswept world. Feel the grains of dust brushing your skin. Watch the long rolling dunes shift slowly. See the storms in the distance rising like walls of haze, only to disappear as quietly as they came. Each movement of air carries a story, a history of force and patience, destruction and renewal. Let the whispering winds of Maldek settle in your mind. They remind us that even the most empty or silent places are alive. Even a planet that seems still has motion, rhythm and change. The dust and wind tell a story of endurance, of slow, quiet transformation, and of the persistent shaping of the land. As you breathe deeply now, imagine the winds carrying both dust and memory across valleys, over craters and through canyons. Feel the quiet power of air, a force that never rests, yet never hurries. Let the whispers of Maldek's winds remind you that even in silence, the world moves, the story continues, and nothing is ever truly still.